Are you always wondering why your favorite photographer's work looks so good and yours just feels like it sucks? Well, often the answer is editing. And you've probably heard this idea that film photos shouldn't be edited. But the truth is, they've been edited for years and years in the darkroom, and now they're still being edited in Lightroom. If you're getting your film developed and scanned, then your pictures are going to come out differently depending where you're going. Scanners scan things differently. They have different kind of presets almost. So it's kind of down to you to edit your photos to make them look how they should do, look how you want, or to create your own kind of style. So today I'm going to show you what it is I do when I'm editing my film photos, how I correct things, how I sort of build my own style, look, and create interesting colors and all of that jazz. And yeah, give you some tools for making your film photos really pop rather than feeling really flat and boring. But first, how often do you find yourself starting editing in a nice, comfortable position with a straight back and all that, and then later down the line you find yourself in the most insane position you could possibly be in? Well, today's sponsor, Flexispot, is a game changer. Flexispot's E7L adjustable desk can hold up to 330 pounds of weight, and it has a triple motor system that makes it super stable while the height's being adjusted. Personally, I've found that being able to easily switch between standing up and sitting down makes me feel way better throughout the day, and it stops me from finding more crazy positions to sit in. Whether you're a photographer, a video editor, or you just work from home, having a desk like this where you can stand up, sit down, have loads of space to work in, and feel really comfortable the whole time makes a massive difference. But that's not all. It's also the best value for money compared to its competitors. And it also has a 15-year warranty, so you don't need to worry about anything going wrong. Flexispot is having some crazy sales at the moment, so don't miss your chance. Go and have a look, and if you do like one, then leave a note saying maxkenttt at checkout and use my code YTE7P50 to save an extra $50 and get your own E7L standing desk. That would be amazing, and of course, it really helps the channel. Anyway, let's get back to it. So here we've got a picture that I took quite a few years back. It was just a bit of a editorial kind of vibe. Someone wanted me to take some photos for him. I took this picture with flash, and then the sun was setting behind him. As you can see, the scan is relatively flat, and that is how I like my scans. The place that I go to pretty much scans things exactly how I want it, so it's ready for editing. I generally think that the simplest and easiest thing you can do to make your film photos start to look a bit better is by reducing your highlights, bringing those down. Usually your highlights are a little bit more blown out in film photography because you've maybe overexposed a little bit. So I just find bringing them down starts to make it look, I don't know, just looks a bit better. For me personally, with this photo, I would bring the shadows down quite a bit as well. You can see that contrast in the shadows that's kind of in the middle part of the image. And for me, it creates a lot more depth in this picture. Some people really increase their shadows, so like really blow them out like this. And this is this kind of, I don't know, pastel vibe that a lot of people go for. It's totally up to you. This is editing. It's sort of quite a personal thing to try and make your own style. Personally, I like the contrast a lot more. Not super contrasty, but enough. Sometimes after I've done that, I'll then decrease the actual contrast a little bit, but usually I don't really see that much of a difference in it. I think you find really with editing that less is usually more. I don't normally need to do much with the exposure because normally my highlights and shadows have done enough for me, unless I've really under or overexposed dramatically. But if you've underexposed it in film photography, you're probably not going to get the shadows back. With this particular photo, I'm probably going to reduce this point curve just a little bit. Again, just brings a little bit more contrast into it. If you see before and after, just brings the whole midtones down just a little bit. Nothing too much. I think you'll know, like, if you really bring it down, you'll be like, okay, well, that obviously looks insane. Somewhere around here feels right for this. Personally, I don't really feel like the temperature really needs to change on this, and I don't want to increase the vibrancy apart from on a few specific colors, which I'll do in a minute in the color mixer. I know some people, or quite a lot of people, still use Lightroom Classic. I've just always used normal Lightroom, so that's why I'm showing you in normal Lightroom. So I'll probably increase the saturation of the orange a little bit and maybe decrease the luminance just by a touch. Not loads and loads. You don't want it to be super intense. That's just because of the skin tones. We're just trying to get it to feel a little bit more how it was. Don't want it to feel too crazy, too over the top, like either way. Found that, like, if you're playing around with the blues too much, if you look here, if you really reduce the luminance, then you'll see that it becomes really, really pixelated. So again, it's kind of like less is more. You can maybe add a tiny bit of saturation to it. You could change the hue like over to like more cyan if you wanted to, but I don't think that it's too important. I had to go glasses on because it's an important job, you know, you got to see what you're doing. Let's see what kind of yellows we've got in this image. Oh yeah, so if for this particular image, I want to increase the yellows a bit. I don't want it to be too much. It can just look a bit silly, but again, you can see where those yellows are when you go like intense. You can see where they are. You can see the kind of difference it makes. And now if we go back to how it was, it looks a little bit like less vibrant, obviously. And then if you put the color back in there, a little bit more vibrancy. Again, it's easy to go overboard, but if you take off the light, changes in light that we had before and bring it back, I definitely prefer the edited version. Feels kind of low key, maybe a little bit muted, I would say. Now you can either play around with the point curve here to try and get different colors in the shadows and the highlights if you want to. Sometimes what I do is do it in the color grading tab. You could go to kind of like cyan, which, because it's a very shadowy image, you kind of don't want to go too far in there. And then maybe go to like the orange in the highlights. But because the cyan feels a little bit too overpowering here, you could then pull it down on the left just to reduce it a bit, make it feel a bit more contrasty rather than feeling like low contrast feels off. That feels a little bit nicer. What does it look like at the highlights? So before, after, you just got a little bit of blue on the dark parts of his clothing and stuff, really. So it's not overly intense. It's just a nice feel to it. The biggest thing that I tend to use when I'm editing, like nearly every single time now, is a reduction in clarity. So you don't want to go too far. If you go really far, obviously it just looks insane. If you go maybe sort of -20, that kind of feels right to me. And then maybe a small reduction in texture as well, but nothing too far. This just gives out that kind of dreamy feel. It feels just a little bit soft, but not overly soft. And if we compare this to the image, like how it was before, then it's looking really nice right now. There's a lot of different ways that you could edit this kind of photo. You could go more intense, more contrast. If you go literally just lift that contrast a little bit more, then the colors are popping even more. So if we go back down to like -21 on the contrast, it's kind of like muted, maybe a little bit more pastel, whereas you go to +20 on the contrast and it looks pretty strong, but for some people this could be like a little bit too much. Of course, with this picture, if you wanted to, you could then crop it a little bit just so it seems to sort of fit a little bit better. We'll do custom aspect ratio for this one and literally just bring it down like that. Maybe straighten it up a little bit. It's just hard to see where the horizon is. Does that feel better? Potentially. I think it's a pretty solid picture as it is there. Again, there's no real right or wrong way with editing. I would always say that less is more. Do it in small increments so that you can see these little changes coming together and go, okay, that's enough of a change. You don't want to go too far, too crazy. Next up, I'm going to show you a different way to edit your film photos. And I think this is the perfect demonstration of a photo that looks pretty poor when I first took it. This photo is really one of my favorite photos that I've taken. But before the edit, it looks really bad. The simplest things, the absolute simplest things completely change this photo. Literally, I'm going to bring the highlights down a bit. You can see a lot more of the color in the background. Those really deep blues. It's beautiful. But it's the foreground that needs changing. And usually where I would go down into the shadows, I'm actually going to bring the shadows up, probably to about there. Just doing that pretty much transforms this picture. Yeah, you could crop it a little bit, you can do whatever, but just those two things completely transform it. The reason why you've got to bring those shadows up is because there just wasn't enough information there in those shadows at first. It was just so dark, there was no color, there was nothing. I'm going to try and fix up the skin tones just a little. I mean, it's good skin tones, to be fair. I'd probably add a little bit more orange. Let's just have a look at the luminance. The reason why I'm going to increase the luminance a little bit is because along the edge of the leg, I want to increase the brightness of the light there because I think it will give it more depth, and overall it just brings this picture to life a little bit more. You could then do a little bit with the blues, perhaps bring the luminance down a tiny little bit, maybe bring that saturation up a little bit. You don't want to go too far, obviously you can make it look insane. Probably maybe like plus 20 or so. Let's just see what the color difference is. So before, maybe a little bit more washed out in the blues. Here, the blues are a little bit more deep. Again, you got to remember a lot of this is personal choice. There's not really much to do with the greens here. Let's see how much yellow we've got. I think you could just leave the yellow as it is, really. I mean, you can make it brighter around the window, but it will look weird because it'll just make it look more grainy. And finally, I literally just want to show you this one because it has quite a lot of greens in it. Greens are obviously very, very prominent in photography, in trees, in grass, in shrubbery, things like that. And I think if you change your greens just a little bit, then it can look a lot more beautiful. Of course, as always, I'm going to bring those highlights down. It might be different for you when you're working with your scans because your scans might look a bit different. You might not need to bring your highlights down as much as I do. You might not need to play with the shadows as much as I do. You'll know when it feels right and when it feels like you've gone too far. You don't need to necessarily always bring your highlights way down to minus 100. Personally, bringing the shadows down probably, minus 40, minus 50 is okay with me. Like I say, some people might go to plus 100, then you're going into that sort of pastel territory. I prefer to be down here with a little bit of contrast, but not too crazy. I'm going to have a look at what the point curve will look like if I bring this middle down a bit. Maybe it makes it a bit too dark. Maybe we can just bring it down a tiny little bit. Again, I'm reasonably happy with the temperature of this. It looks fine for me. But what I'm going to show you is the way that we can make the tree color, the greenery in the trees look different. Basically, we've got the hue, the saturation, the luminance. If you reduce your luminance, then you're going to make it look a lot darker, but the hue has a really big impact because you can change how that green is perceived. Usually what I'll do is change the hue to +15 or so, reduce the saturation slightly, and reduce that luminance slightly. But I think with this one, it's potentially a little bit more yellowy. And maybe that's where the color comes from, is by changing the hue of the yellow. It's a difficult balance. You don't want to go really far with it because it can just start looking a bit over the top, but it really depends on the light on that particular day and that particular shot. So you could have a preset where you're really reducing those hues or changing those hues of the greens, and for one photo it looks natural and it looks right, and for another photo it could look a bit stupid. And of course, as usual, I'll reduce the clarity. I forgot to do that on the last one. And with this one, you can potentially reduce it a bit more. So I've gone to like -25, maybe not quite as noticeable. Sometimes what you'll find is when you're editing it in Lightroom, it looks acceptable or nice or good, and then you export it and look at it again and you're like, oh, this doesn't look quite how it looked in Lightroom. So this is it really. Often you're just making minor adjustments, and genuinely some of the biggest impacts literally just come from reducing your highlights and playing with your shadows. Obviously, there's so many other things that come into editing film scans and editing in general. But if everyone that shot film just corrected their highlights and shadows, they would probably have way better photos. Also, this is not a Bible. This is just the way that I tend to edit my photos. I'm by no means someone that goes crazy on the edit. I don't go really far. And so some people might want to do loads and loads to their photos. Some people might want to do very little, but enough to make sure that the photos look really good. I really hope that you found this one really helpful and really valuable. And obviously go and take a look at Flexispot, take a look at their tables, because this is beautiful and really comfortable. And I think anything that helps you long term, it's like buying a bed. You know, you look at a bed and you're like, oh my God, that's loads of money. And then you're like, yeah, but I sleep on the bed every single night. And so if you divided it up by every single night that you used it, I mean, really, it's nothing. So take care of yourself, take care of your back, take care of your posture, all that stuff. Stand up, get a nice little table thing. And of course, take care of yourself and drop me a subscribe. Everything that you do to support this channel is just amazing, and I really am very happy with all the love and support that I get along the way.